Yo, what's going on guys? Jay here, and I got a special video I'm dropping for you today. We're talking about the post SoundCloud era of rappers on the come up, that 2019 to early 2020 phase where there was a lot of new talent popping off in the rap game. After SoundCloud had kind of died and we got the last back end of those rappers, the Juice WRLDs, Trippie Redds, etc. These are the rappers who were coming out after that and just absolutely dominating the mainstream scene for a period of time. And there's more artists in this group than the ones that I'm going to discuss. I just picked 15 that I thought would be pretty interesting to talk about. The reason I wanted to talk about these rappers is to just examine and just look at some trends, because nowadays rappers don't have the shelf life that they used to. That is very apparent. You look at rappers who came out 13 years ago, like the Drakes and Kendricks and J. Cole's and Tyler's, who are all still around, more successful than ever. Some of the rappers that we're going to talk about in this video, like Lil Baby or Roddy Ricch, for example, were greeted with massive mainstream success, 2, 3, 4 years into their career, very shortly into their career. And then 2, 3, 4 years later are struggling to even get close to the position they were at. Obviously, there's a lot of different reasons we could attribute to this. You could look at the domination of streaming on the music market and how that's changed how artists make music and how labels attempt to sell and market music, especially in hip-hop right now, with a lot of major labels chasing after TikTok hits and stuff like that as a way of generating money instead of investing into their artists' futures and trying to see the long-term profit. It seems they're looking at the short-term gain right now in terms of a lot of the upcoming talent they're signing, as well as the other aspects like people's attention span shortening over time and the oversaturation of music as a whole. Obviously, we are in the digital era. There is far more music that people have access than there used to be, and far more people making music than ever. So there's a lot of new hip-hop artists and just other artists in general always on the rise, always cycling through their careers, always gaining notoriety. So it's a lot to keep up with, and a lot of these rappers struggled keeping their fans' attention over these last 4 years since they initially blew up. Also, I should say briefly before we begin, this is a lot of rappers who are coming out and that I enjoyed during high school. So this is a lot of rappers that I have some connection to, a lot of artists that I enjoyed and still do to this day. Let's talk about Blueface first, because let's be honest, guys, this man is not a rapper anymore. He is a influencer, online media personality, whatever you want to call him. He's a bad dad and a pretty bad person, it seems. And despite Blueface's flop of a rap career, I really did enjoy some of this guy's songs when he was on the come up. Blueface had a very quick peak in his career with Tatiana and the remixes with the likes of Cardi B or YG, really being where his career started and stopped. He of course had other hits at the time like Bleed It, as well as Daddy with Rich the Kid that charted at 78 on the Billboard Hot 100. His earlier uninspired mixtapes like Dirtbag or Famous Crip do have, again, a few enjoyable songs to me, and they had songs that had clout at the time that Blueface was popping, right? Like, he didn't have a bunch of hits, but he had songs at the time. His name was relevant. But then in 2020, he finally dropped the debut studio album, which, real quick, this is a problem a lot of these rappers face, waiting too long to either drop their debut album or to follow up their most successful album. And you will see that trend continue throughout this video. And yeah, this album found the beat. This was a flop, no hits from it, nothing people were talking about, and essentially ended Blueface's career. It was dead before he even dropped it. And it sold 12K first week, which is less than a lot of these rappers are selling now, and this was after Blueface had been established and had hits. Moving on to another rapper here whose career is pretty dead in the water. We're talking about DaBaby. This man was on top of the world in late 2019. 2020. He had a #1 hit with Rockstar featuring Roddy Ricch. He also had Suge reach as high as #7 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2019. And his second album was a huge success as well. Kirk, you had hits on there like Off Rip, Intro, Bop. There's two big components to DaBaby's fall off. You got A, of course, him being canceled for things that he said at a festival. Like, let's be honest, guys. I feel like a lot of people were already looking for a reason to stop listening to DaBaby, or were already done with DaBaby at that point. He was a pretty flash in the pan instance. It wasn't too long after his blow up that people started telling him to switch his sound, so I don't think he was canceled or blackballed like he says. Like, obviously, it affected his career, but it did not kill it. It was his music that did, and you look at absolutely terrible albums he's dropped since then, like Better Than You with Youngboy Never Broke Again and Baby on Baby 2. Also, not being major flops, but not selling the 145K Kirk did first week. Megan Thee Stallion is another rapper from this group who was on the top of the game during this time. She had a huge #1 with Savage, as well as getting Beyonce on the remix. WAP with Cardi B also went #1 in 2020. And in 2019 to 2020, she had other huge Billboard hits like Big Ol' Freak, Hot Girl Summer, Girls in the Hood, Cash Shit, and Body. Megan Thee Stallion will always be a rapper who people are going to debate about how good she is and what she raps about. I'm not here to have that discussion today. Megan Thee Stallion has some bangers. I enjoy a handful of her music. I don't think she's dropped any particularly or notably good albums, but she also hasn't dropped anything super trash. She's a rapper who can rap really well and has also experiments with singing and other things. She doesn't put a bunch of effort into her pen game. She has tracks where she's rapping about shit, songs on Good News where she's rapping about the Tory Lanez incident, among other things. There is substance in her music, just not all of it has it. But yeah, the Tory Lanez shooting has actually, I feel like it's kind of halted her career in a way. She's been pretty quiet the last couple of years. Albums she's dropped haven't been as successful, and I feel like now that that whole case is closed and Tory is behind bars, she will return to the eye of the mainstream in a pretty big way soon. How she's gonna do though, I don't know. In 2019, her breakout mixtape Fever sold 28K first week. Well, in 2020, Good News sold over 100K first week. But her most recent effort, her 2022 album Traumazine, sold 66K, which is a drop off, but not a major one. I think she's looking to get another hit in her favor before the next big album drops, but maybe people have already moved on to the next best thing in terms of the Ice Spices of the world. Moving on now to Lil Baby, who like DaBaby and like Megan Thee Stallion, during this time period was objectively at the top, one of the faces of the rap game, of this new wave of upcoming rappers. He was really him. He is a rapper whose career did start rapping in 2016 and blew up initially in 2018 with huge songs like Yes Indeed and Drip Too Hard. But in 2019 and especially 2020, My Turn is still one of the best-selling albums of the decade so far. Huge amounts of hits on that album. Lil Baby's got plaques from that, and as well from his singles run during this time. But 2 years later, when he finally came through with It's Only Me, it was pretty renownedly regarded as a not great album. Not many songs were super viral or super big, which does leave a lot of people questioning what's Lil Baby gonna do next. I feel like, myself included, as a huge Lil Baby fan, a lot of people are kind of tired of getting the same type of thing from him. It's Only Me was objectively a My Turn Part 2 in terms of sonics, aesthetics, Lil Baby's rapping style, the production, all that. It wasn't a huge deviation. So we'll see where he goes next sonically and also how he sells next. I still could see him on his next album getting a #1 album of the week and selling a very good amount because he's still Lil Baby and he's only flopped once. You'll see a couple of other rappers here who have trajectories where they have a huge album, sells amazingly, hit songs, it's the album that puts them on, and then their next album that's regarded as a flop sells, about half, maybe a little less, a little more than the original album, and is regarded as a flop. But it's not until that next flop where people really start to write off a rapper. So I feel like Lil Baby's got one more chance to win the general audience back and take another crack at getting back to the top of the charts, to be honest, because he's been absent from them for a while. Fabio Foreign is an interesting rapper to talk about because he, of course, blew up with Pop Smoke in the whole breakout of that New York drill scene. He had songs popping off like Wetty and Big Drip, and either of those songs were super big hits across the country, but me being from New York, these were big songs, great songs in my opinion, and they were hits to me because you would hear them, all the time. Fivey's also in a weird position because he's only dropped one album in these last 4 years. Last year we got his debut, Bible, which sold 29K first week, which I'd say is fair for Fivey. And it's an album that didn't have any hit songs really, except City of Gods, but that was also released as a single and featured Kanye West and Alicia Keys. But the album was, a lot of people, at least from what I've seen online, enjoyed the album and thought it was good, but not great. I mean, that's my feelings. I feel like you ask anyone who's listened to Bible by Fabio, I think that's what they'll give you. It was, of course, executive produced by Kanye, which is, again, another big deal. And now in 2023, the drill scene is kind of, taking its last breaths. It's really At least to me, I think it's on its way out. I think people are kind of over the whole phase, and there's not any artists who are really bringing anything new to it, except for Fabi, who really did on Bible. But maybe on his next album, he switches it up and goes for a more traditional trap route, since, like I said, drill is starting to not be as popular as it used to be. So yeah, this leaves Fabi in a very interesting album, coming off of a not majorly successful, but a pretty well-respected album that had a lot of big names like Kanye involved in working on it. So it's really a mystery what is going to be next from Fabi musically, as well as how it's going to be received by the fans and how well it's going to sell. NLE Choppa is another rapper who instantly got thrown into fame. He went on a huge run with Shotta Flow 1, 2, Shotta Flow 3, Camelot, Walk 'Em Down, just a huge number of hit songs in a very short period of time. NLE Choppa, though, is another rapper who waited until 2020 to drop his debut studio album after initially blowing up in, late 2018, which I think was a pretty big mistake for him. He has yet to capture those mainstream highs that he had in 2018 and 2019. Top Shot, it did still sell 27K first week, so I wouldn't say it's a flop by any means. And it was like a fine album. It's what you'd expect. It wasn't really good, but it wasn't absolute garbage either. But then later that year, NLE Choppa would go on to sell 6K with From Dark to Light. This was, of course, during his weird NLE Chakra phase where he was on that all healthy, organic herb stuff he was doing. Clearly a bad time for his fan base, because this album did poorly and I've never seen anyone talk about it. And now in 2022, 2 years after that, 2 years of only dropping singles, NLE Choppa did something a lot of these other rappers on this list haven't done. He built up a core audience, because NLE Choppa is very popular right now. He does well streaming wise, and he consistently puts out music, and he's a rapper who's really shifted himself into a lane of his own where he is able to have a super dedicated fan base and be successful without being a chart-topping superstar. So yeah, like I was saying, 2022, Me Versus Me drops, and it sells 22K, which is a big increase. That's over 3 times what he sold on the last one. You, of course, had a pretty big song on there like Slut Me Out. I personally think that song's fucking terrible, but pretty trendy song nonetheless. And earlier this year, he sold 23K with Cottonwood 2, which is another improvement. Now, to be honest, I haven't listened to this record, full disclosure, but it's safe to say NLE Choppa is here to stay. Even if he's not reaching the commercial highs he used to, he clearly has an audience. Rod Wave is another rapper who, like NLE Choppa, has really shifted into a lane of his own where he is able to be super popular, super successful, great album sales, sell out arena shows, which again, something most of these rappers can't do. Someone like Lil Baby, who I was talking about before, has had to cancel shows on his current tour because he wasn't getting enough ticket sales. So in 2020, Hard on Ice blew up, peaked at number 25 on the Billboard. This is really where Rod Wave got on. His highest charting song since then is Rags to Riches, which came out at a similar time. And he is also at 69 entries onto the Billboard Hot 100. Nice. This is very surprising to me because Rod Wave's not someone I ever really hear people talking about banging or whatever. Of course, there is the regional factors that will play into it. Rod Wave is probably very poppin' in other parts of the country, just like how I was saying Fabio Foreign was super poppin' around me. But let's just take a look at this guy's album sales here, because in terms of a rapper who I think is going to always be in the picture over the course of the next 10 years from this crop, it is Rod Wave. In 2019 with Ghetto Gospel, he sold 21,700 copies first week, bolstering that up heavily to 72,000 first week in 2020 with Pray for Love. The following year, of course, Soulfly dropped, which was his biggest album to drop until recently, 130,000 first week. And in 2022, we did get a slight drop off with Beautiful Mind down to 115,000, but this year, 2023, in the last month and a half when Rod Wave dropped Nostalgia, I did a review for it, by the way. It sold 137,000 first week, his highest first week album sales ever. This is pretty fucking significant. Shout out to Rod Wave, who is a rapper that I don't personally enjoy, but he clearly has his thing going for him and has people who love his music. Next up, we're talking about Don Toliver, who has not been trending great recently, but is not going to fail either because he is signed to Cactus Jack, Travis Scott's record label. Of course, in 2022, he broke out with a series of hits like No Idea and After Party, selling 44,000 first week with his debut album, Heaven or Hell. But the following year with Life of a Don, he would hit his highest first week sales yet with 68,000. But with Lovesick, that dropped in the beginning of this year, and I will say Heaven and Hell, great album. Life of a Don, good album. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's a super solid and consistent track list. But Lovesick, I'm not gonna lie, this is not a great album. This is pretty garbage in my opinion. There's not a single song on this album I revisit. And Don sold 40,500 copies first week with it. So it is a decline, his lowest first week sales yet. And also pretty, again, across the board, I feel like more people felt disappointed by this album than not. So yeah, like I said, Don Toliver, likely he won't fail. He's signed to Travis, but how much more potential does he really have? Roddy Ricch is an interesting case here because he blew the fuck up out of not out of nowhere. He was already trending in the right direction. But when Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial dropped, The Box was an album track. That was not like a single or anything. That was a track on the album. And Please Excuse Me sold 101,000 first week, so it was pretty fucking popular. Roddy was popping off, and The Box was a pretty organic hit. Of course, TikTok contributed to it, but this wasn't like a huge single with a bunch of promo. I remember listening to that album for the first time and hearing The Box and being like, shit, this is gonna be a hit. It had all the makings for it. But yeah, Roddy on an infamous decline since then, selling 62,000 first week with Live Life Fast, which was his follow-up. He, of course, was hyping up the no-skip policy. And man, there was some skips there. This album also, like a lot of other rappers I've been talking about, was pretty widely renowned as a flop. It is like a lot of these other rappers, like Lil Baby and everyone else has said, this is a criticism where the fans are saying to the rapper, or either asking the rapper to switch it up or feeling like they've heard the songs already and that these are just lesser versions of their previous work. Even with Feed the Streets 3, which was another decline in sales, going down to 39,000 first week, this was slightly better than Live Life Fast. It did give people hope that Roddy may be trending in the right direction once again in terms of the quality of his music, because Roddy is definitely one of the better, more talented artists on this list. He really is a great singer and he has a great mind for music. You could see that with what he was doing in 2019. He has just yet to really do anything more than that, to be honest. We also got to talk about the major lyricist at this time period, Cordae. His debut album, The Lost Boys, sold 25K first week, which was a pretty large dub. He got the Grammy nomination out of it, and despite the fact that there wasn't any real mainstream hits, everyone who listened to this album loved it. I personally love this album, and it garnered Cordae a lot of respect. And what he did with it was wait 3 years to drop an album. This is another issue where we see the artist waiting 3 years is way too long to wait to drop an album as a unestablished artist. But in 2022, we did get From a Bird's Eye View, which is already a decrease, selling 20,000 units first week. Not the biggest difference ever, but it shows that a lot of people who checked that album out weren't going back for it or enjoying it, which again, another situation where yes, a lot of people across the board were disappointed with this album. A lot of mid allegations being thrown at From a Bird's Eye View, and hey, I'm not gonna be the guy to dispute them. But this does leave Cordae in a weird place where, again, the public perception of him has soured a little bit, but I think there is still a lot of love and respect for him, and me personally, I'm very excited to see what he does next, and I think a lot of other people are too. We also got to talk about Lil Tecca, who is one of the few rappers, other than Rod Wave, I think he might be the only other one, see an increase in first week sales with his most recent album. Of course, We Love You Tecca had Ransom. It was huge. He was huge. 68,000 first week. And then in 2020, Virgo World was the follow-up. Tecca sold 35,000 with that. Like I said, it's about half less than his debut album. Going into 2021, We Love You Tecca 2, which again saw a decline to 30,000. Here's where we first really saw Tecca tapping in with the new crop of upcoming artists. I mentioned this in the tech review I did, where Lil Tecca is really established artist who's coming in and helping a lot of these younger guys find their sounds. People like Ken Carson, Can, and other rage rappers Tecca has produced for, work with. He is clearly a part of this movement, and because of that, he has set himself up to be relevant for the next couple of years, coming through this year with Tech, 2 years since We Love You Tecca 2, and selling 41,000 units first week, which is, you know, a 10,000 unit increase. That's kind of a big deal, you know? I mean, Tecca, I think a lot of people didn't think he had much shelf life, including myself, but clearly he might be outliving, at least a third of this list in terms of relevancy, despite not having a major hit come out in the last 2 years. This is just him organically cultivating a fan base and also dropping his best album yet with Tech. Talking about Lil TJ, he may not be the superstar I thought he was destined to be, and his career trajectory has looked pretty fucking poor at this point, to be honest. Selling 45,000 units first week with his debut album, True to Myself. I love this album. I'm losing the term classic loosely right now, but this is an album that's classic to me. This represents a period of time, a phase of my life. Lil TJ was one of my favorite rappers, and this album doesn't have any skips to me. 2 years later, we got Destined to Win, which sold 62,000 first week, and like a lot of these other follow-up albums, people were pretty disappointed. I don't think it's the greatest album, but there is some solid tracks here. And 2 years later, in 2023, we got 222 from Lil TJ, which sold 22,000 first week and almost got no press and no buzz. This was a huge shock to me because Lil TJ just came back from surviving being shot a handful of times. Incredible that he survived, that's amazing, but I thought he would come back with more passion in his music and more grit, and there was to a degree. I've said before that album had better songwriting than his previous works. It just wasn't anything different sonically. But despite things looking bad, I don't think TJ's career is finished for a couple of reasons. I feel like Lil TJ is always liable to pop out with a hit. He's got a knack for making super catchy choruses, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy have more hit songs in the future. But more importantly, I think Lil TJ has done a really good job of not oversaturating the market. Having 3 albums in 6 years is honestly really fucking solid. And I think it works because Lil TJ is someone who doesn't switch up his sound much from album to album. So it's good that he's not putting an album out every year. That would not be good for his career. And I do think Lil TJ has potential to bounce back. Like, yeah, he flopped, but I feel like if he corrects his mistakes and comes through differently, we could be talking about him also being another rapper who stopped the flop narrative. We got 2 more rappers that I want to talk about from this time, from this era. And I thank you guys for bearing with me. I know it's been a long one at this point, but right now, we're talking about Polo G, who in 2019 and 2020 was one of my favorite rappers. I listened to him all the time, and I thought this man was genuinely poised to take over the whole hip-hop scene for 2 reasons. A, the commercial appeal is clearly there. He's an interesting case in terms of his career trajectory, we'll talk about in a minute. But the commercial success and appeal is there, but it's also, Polo G has the skill set, right? You think about tracks like Bloody Canvas that have pretty excellent storytelling. Not the best overall lyricism and songwriting, but the storytelling itself is there. At points, he shows flashes of true greatness, creativity, and bringing something to rap that isn't there. But that's only on 1 or 2 songs on every album he's released. And I've always said that if he brought that type of energy and that type of ambition to a whole project, that I could really win over the more old heady type fans, the more lyrical rap fans like myself, while also being popular enough to cross over into the mainstream. I really thought that was something Polo G was going to do. But not only did he not switch it up, he made even more generic and mainstream music as time went on. You look at Die a Legend, which sold 68,000 first week. This was a big album. It had Pop Out on it. He followed it up with The GOAT, which sold 99,000 units first week. And in 2021, he dropped Hall of Fame, which sold 143,000 units first week. And of course, this was at the rap star time. Polo G, need I remind you, has a #1 hit song in Rap Star. And he was pretty fucking global at this point. But 143,000 is kind of light for having a #1 song and having other poppin' singles like Give No Fucks, Okay, 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 and Gang Gang with Lil Wayne. But I don't know a single person that this album resonated with. This is another album pretty critically fucking panned. And Polo G is yet to drop an album since then. He did drop a deluxe, which I didn't even look into the numbers for. I don't think anyone cares about the deluxe. But Polo G managed to drop his most successful album by a long shot and also absolutely lose the fans. He's been dropping singles since then. A lot of you might think he's been quiet, been taking a break. No, he's been dropping music. It just, A, hasn't been that good, and B, hasn't been making any noise at all. So, despite Polo G having one of the best careers so far on this album, and on paper looking poised to do pretty fucking good, he has really lost the fan base that he has had trouble getting singles to pop off, and has tried to rely on gimmicks like the whole Smooth Criminal song that dropped a couple years ago. And I think is one of the rappers that honestly faces the worst chance of falling off. The last rapper we're talking about I think is the guy who is really going to do what I thought Polo G was going to do 4 years ago. I think he is going to be the guy to garner that respect of the overall hip-hop community while also crossing over into the mainstream and becoming a megastar. We're talking about Baby Keem. Of course, Baby Keem is Kendrick Lamar's cousin. I think he is the most likely to be at the top of the game, 10 years down the line of this group of rappers. And though the Melodic Blue, which was a huge success and had family ties, only sold 53,000 first week, I really think we're just getting started with Baby Keem. He'll have all the culture, media, and promotion behind him. Everyone is vying for Keem to succeed. He has the assets being signed to Kendrick Lamar's label, PG Lang, and he already has the industry connections, but he's also one of the most creative minds in hip-hop right now, and is someone who is willing to experiment and just have fun while making music. So yeah, that was a lot. Anybody you think I missed, let me know. Let me know if you agree with these, but real quick, let's just talk about maybe some takeaways, maybe some advice to the new upcoming rappers. Wait 3 years to drop a debut album, or to just drop it all when you're young in your career, but also don't drop multiple times a year every year. You don't want to oversaturate the market for your niche, for your sound. You want to keep your fans coming back and keep them always waiting for what's next to a degree. Also, as surprising as it might sound, with all the things I said about at the beginning about how music is made differently and marketed differently than it used to be, I think the thing that is apparent, again, circling back to what I said about J. Cole, Kendrick, and them, because it's not like they didn't have contemporaries who fell off. I think a lot of people expect, with the way the marketing is and the way the media portrays hip-hop right now, and they have been the last couple of years, it creates a culture where everyone's trying to go number one, get the number one album, get the viral TikTok hit. But I think at the end of the day, it goes to show you that making good music and not compromising your artistic vision for success is the best move for artists to take once they blow up, right? Because I think a lot of the rappers like Roddy Ricch and Lil Baby, their biggest issues after dropping their most successful album was being afraid to switch it up and possibly lose the interest of the fans. I think labels assumed that fans and consumers would keep coming back to artists for putting out the same thing, the hit songs. Like I said, they're trying to generate hits versus albums. But then you look at someone like Travis Scott with Utopia, who waited 5 years to drop something completely different than what he's done before, definitely out there, innovative, and it is one of his most well-renowned albums to date. When you look at the rappers from 5 to 10 years ago who are still here and still prevalent, it's really the people who clearly have artistic visions that they're trying to execute and aren't afraid to step out of the music that got them to where they are. And I think I think people like Roddy Ricch and Polo G, who were some of the best rappers in this crop, I think if they were to really let themselves get creative, get ambitious, put more effort into songwriting on their... Polo's still going to drop like the flop album, so we don't even know for sure, but Roddy Ricch at least, if he was to drop something like that instead of Live Life Fast and really step away from Please Excuse Me for being antisocial and separate himself from being the guy who made the box, I think he'd be in a much better place than he is now. But yeah, that's another long one. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.